So yesterday we discussed that how Bhishma Dev spoke to Pandavas. Now, after speaking to the Pandavas, so Bhishma Dev in the 23rd verse, uh, he's expressing his gratitude that Krishna has come in front of him when he is about to leave his body. The 23rd and 24th verse, I will read both these verses together. I hope you are able to hear and see. Bhaktyaveshya mano yasmin vacha yannama kirtayan tyajan kalevaram yogi muchyate kama karma bhi sadeva devo bhagavan pratikshatam kalevaram yavadidam hinomyaham prasannaha runalochano lasan mukambujo Dhyanapataschaturbuja. So, Bhakti Aveshya Mano Yasmin. Bhakti Aveshya Mana, the devotee whose mind is absorbed in Krishna. Yasmin Vacha Yan Nama Kirtayan. And whose voice chants the holy name of Krishna, Yan Nama Kirtayan. And such a devotee, Muchyate kama karma bhi, becomes freed from all the karmas, tyajan kalevaram, when he gives up the material body. So a devotee whose mind is absorbed in Krishna, whose voice chants the holy name, he becomes freed from the karmas and giving up the material body. Sa deva devo bhagavan pratikshatam. May that Krishna, who is the Deva Deva, the Lord of the Lords, and who is Prasanna Hasa Aruna Lochanolasan Mukambujo, who is having a glowing lotus face, Mukha Ambujo, and who is having Aruna Lochana, reddish eyes, and Prasanna Hasa, who is having a pleasing smile, and Chaturbuja, who is having a 4 arms. And may that Supreme Lord Krishna be Dhyana Pata, the object of my meditation. And may the Supreme Lord Kalevaram Yavad Idam Hinomi Aham. May the Supreme Lord remain before me when I actually drink his beauty and when I praise him before giving up this body. Sadeva Devo Bhagavan Pratikshatam Kalevaram Yavadidam Hinomyaham. May that Supreme Lord remain before me. Bhishma Deva is expressing his desire that the Lord actually remain before him when he actually gives up this body. So Bhishma actually addressed Krishna as a form with 4 arms because that was the form of Krishna mentioned in the mantra which he had used during meditation. Like Bhishma Deva was essentially attracted to the 4-handed form of Krishna. So therefore he is mentioning the Chaturbuja, that is the form of Krishna which he is attracted to. So we see that like every devotee may be attracted to a particular form of Krishna in his mature stage, and that individuality of the devotee is respected by the Lord. That is facilitated by the Lord. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, he appeared in this world in order to understand the glories of Srimati Radharani's love. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself was attracted to the Shyam Sundar form of Krishna, Aradhya Bhagavan Vrajesha Tanayas. But then there were devotees of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu like Murari Gupta. He was particularly attracted to the form of Lord Ram. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appreciated his devotion and loyalty towards Lord Ram. That individuality was appreciated by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's not that Mahaprabhu forced, oh no, you also, he told that why don't you actually hear about Krishna? But when he saw Murari Gupta's devotion to Lord Ram was so strong, Mahaprabhu actually appreciated that individuality Mahaprabhu actually facilitated the individuality. So that is here also Bhishma Dev is attracted to the four-handed form of Krishna, and he is saying that may that Supreme Lord Krishna remain before me well before giving up this body. So here Prabhupada writes a beautiful purport. The 23rd verse he says that Bhishma Dev is referring to a particular type of yoga called Bhakti Yoga, and he was fortunate enough to have the Lord directly in his presence before quitting up the body. And the 24th verse, Prabhupada says that Bhishma Dev knew that Krishna is the original Narayan, and Narayan is a plenary expansion of Krishna. So indirectly he desired that Krishna manifest himself in his four-handed feature. So we see that actually it was certain that Bhishma was going back to Vaikuntha, but still as a humble devotee, he desired to see the beautiful face of the Lord, for after quitting this body, he might not be in a position to see the beautiful face of the Lord. His attitude was that he was thinking that maybe after quitting this body, I don't know in which species I may take birth. But at least before quitting this body, let me have darshan of Krishna. That was the mood. But although it was certain that Bhishma was going back to Vaikuntha, but this is the thinking of a humble Vaishnava. So Bhishma Dev simply desired that the Lord stay before him so that he might concentrate upon him and thus be in a trance in that meditation. So Bhishma Dev, he simply wanted to sanctify his mind. And Bhishma Dev did not mind which place he might go after the death. So Prabhupada explains that a pure devotee is never very anxious to go back to God. He simply depends on the good will of the Lord, and a pure devotee is equally satisfied even if the Lord desires him to go to hell. So therefore, the highest ambition of a pure devotee is that he may always be in rapt attention with thinking of the lotus feet of the Lord, regardless of where he may go. So that Bhishma Dev's desire was, he just wanted to actually focus his mind on the Lord and purify his mind. He did not desire where he might go. And we find in several prayers in the Bhagavatam, when we actually think about this verse, it's like very deep consciousness, because generally many times when we talk about actually going back to Godhead, it is more in terms of actually getting rid of the material world than with a positive attitude of actually developing the the spiritual consciousness of the spiritual world. When we see the scriptures, there is the physical place spiritual world that is mentioned, and then there is the spiritual consciousness, the consciousness of the Vaikuntha residents. So more than actually developing an eagerness to go to the physical place of the spiritual world, we should try to put an effort to develop the consciousness of the residents of the spiritual world. Because otherwise, even if we go to Vaikuntha, but if we had not developed the consciousness of the residents of the spiritual world, then we may find that we may find completely out of place there. So therefore, that our effort should be to actually to develop the spiritual consciousness. That is actually our responsibility, and it is Krishna's responsibility to actually take us back to Godhead, and we don't have to worry about that, and Krishna will never actually fail in his responsibility. We can work on actually only purifying our consciousness. So Bhishma Dev simply desired that let his mind be focused on Krishna, and he was not anxious as to where he might go after the death. In fact, he was thinking that okay, he may take birth in some species, but at least before dying, and Krishna is there, let me have darshan of Krishna. So, yeah, next verse. So we can find several prayers in the same mood. Pracheta's prayer, Vritrasur's prayers, Bharat Maharaj, etc. Suta uvacha Yudhishthirastadakarnya Shayanam Sharapanjare Aprichat Vividan Dharman Rishinam Chanu Shrinvatam. So Suta Goswami said, Yudhishthir, on hearing what he had said, then he asked Bhishma, lying on a bed of arrows, about the various dharmas while the sages were listening. Aprichat Vividan Dharman Rishinam Cha Anushrinvatam. So Yudhishthira Maharaj asked about the various dharmas when the sages were listening. So Yudhishthira Maharaj, he was anxious about who would free him from delusion, began to ask Bhishma, lying on a Yudhishthira Maharaj was in a state of delusion about whether to take up the responsibility of being a king. So normally one should not ask philosophical questions to a person who is on a deathbed. So even when we talk about philosophical discussion, there is also a particular time, sometimes like when we are sitting for prasadam, and then we ask some of the most philosophical questions. That's not the time to ask the philosophical questions. And generally during prasadam time also, like we have a light like Krishna book reading or Prabhupada Leelamrita book reading, etc. So similarly there are like some stories like that. But similarly philosophical discussion, there is a time for it. So when a person is on the deathbed, when a person is on such an intense pain, that time we cannot ask philosophical questions. But it was actually the normally it should not be asked. So Vishwanath Chakravartipad says that though one should not ask such questions when Bhishma is in such a situation, but because Yudhishthira had no alternative, he asked. It was directly inspired by Krishna. Krishna wanted Yudhishthira to ask from Bhishma. So that's why Prabhupada says in the purport that Krishna inspired Yudhishthira to ask from Bhishma Dev. It is not that Yudhishthira lacked that sensitivity. So in the presence of many great sages, Krishna wanted to actually indicate that the Lord's devotee, Krishna, the devotee like Bhishma Dev, although apparently he is living like a worldly man, but Bhishma Dev is far superior to many great sages, even Veda Vyasa. So Krishna wanted to glorify Bhishma Dev, therefore Krishna inspired Yudhishthira to ask all these different dharmas from Bhishma Dev. So to prove that, Krishna wanted to prove that his pure devotee is always sound in body and mind by dint of spiritual enlightenment, and thus in any circumstances a devotee is in perfect order, to speak of the right way of life. So we see that this is not in one sense one is from the point of view asking questions, another is when you see from the point of view speaker, like many times like when we have Bhagavatam class also, like we prepare our thoughts beforehand, and many times we write down, or we have a laptop or iPad, and then after preparing, then we actually speak. It is said that so sometimes when there's spontaneously when you have to speak, that time we don't have the right thoughts, or sometimes we are worried like what I'll speak. That's why it is said that human mind works right from the birth until a person goes for public speaking. So like that, there's a quote which says, that means like you should, when a person goes for public speaking, that many times people become fearful, their mind stops working by seeing the audience present. But here, one is, okay, even in public speaking, at least if a person is given sufficient time for preparation and with practice, one may speak. But here, it is not that Bhishma Dev was given some notice that somebody is going to come and ask you different questions. And moreover, Bhishma Dev was not in a healthy condition. He was in the deathbed. And suddenly all these people come, not just Yudhishthira Maharaj was alone. Like Yudhishthira was there, Krishna was there, Pandavas, and all, so many sages from all over the universe had assembled. And then Yudhishthira is asking about all these different questions to Bhishma Dev, and Bhishma Dev answers or explains all the different dharmas. So we can see the exalted position of a Bhishma Dev. Another example, if we see, that means only a person who has internalized the process of dharma, only a person who has internalized the scriptures, only such a person can actually speak in any situation without any notice, and only such a person can speak even in the most painful condition of the body, because the knowledge was not simply head knowledge, it was a heart knowledge. Because Bhishma Dev knew all these dharmas in his heart, therefore he could speak even in the most difficult situation. We have another examples like Vritarasur. He instructed Indra about Nishkama Karma Yoga in the battlefield. Battlefield is not the place for discourse. Like usually when a person is overcome with a mode of passion, one forgets the knowledge. Vritarasura was fighting the battle, but in the battlefield, he had the transcendental knowledge and he spoke to Indra. That's why Indra was astonished. Another example, we can see Vasudev speaking to Kamsa. Kamsa was like about to kill Devaki. In any person in such a situation, one would be so frightened, one would pass urine and stool simultaneously. But Vasudev, he maintained his composure and he gave a JOSD course to Kamsa, who was having a sword in one hand. You can just imagine, like, to speak in such a situation. And in that situation, Vasudev, he spoke philosophy and he spoke different analogies also. Like to speak spontaneously, different analogies and appropriate philosophy. When a person is about to kill your wife and you are newly married. So these things show that, these things show how these devotees are in exalted consciousness. It is not that they had only head knowledge, they had actually internalized the knowledge. So Bhishma Dev spoke about all these different dharmas while all the sages were listening. So this is called as the, so therefore if we read in the purport 25th, so Prabhupada says that Yudhishthira also, to prove that his pure devotees are always sound in body and mind by dint of spiritual enlightenment, and that in any circumstance a devotee is in perfect order to speak of the right way of life. And also, like Krishna likes to see his son more famous than himself. Krishna wanted to make Bhishma Dev more famous than himself. Therefore, he inspired Yudhishthira Maharaj to ask these questions. And Yudhishthira also preferred to solve his questions by asking Bhishma Dev rather than ask anyone else present there who was seemingly more learned than Bhishma Dev. Because all the other sages, they had spent their whole life teaching and reading Shastra. Like yesterday, when you were having the Panini Vyakaran discussion, one devotee was saying that how like one of his teacher in Vrindavan, like the traditional teachers, they would make a practice of every day spending 3 hours of going through the entire, say, Laghu Siddhanta Kaumudi. That was one part of the Panini Vyakaran. So they would make it as a part of their actually habit as sadhana. And then, so, but like in the case of, when somebody is a Brahmana, somebody is a Rishi, their whole life is meant for that only, studying and teaching. But Bhishma Dev, he was actually a Kshatriya, he was living in the kingdom. It's not that every day he was actually, of course, a Kshatriya is also learned in the Shastra, but he was mainly into managing the kingdom, assisting the Raja of the Hastinapur. In that sense, like other sages were definitely seemingly more learned than Bhishma Dev. But Krishna wanted to show that how Bhishma Dev is more learned than the other sages. And Yudhishthira Maharaj also preferred to ask from Bhishma Dev than any other sages present there, because he knew the deep realizations and this thing of Bhishma Dev. So 26th verse. So what all actually Bhishma Dev spoke to Yudhishthira Maharaj, that is summarized in 26th and 27th verse. In these two verses, what all Bhishma Dev spoke to Yudhishthira, that is summarized. 26, 27 and 28 in three verses. If you see what is mentioned in these three verses, 26, 27 and 28, it is described in the Mahabharata in something like 1400 pages, at least 1000 pages or more, like several thousands of verses, because this section of Bhishma Dev's teaching to Yudhishthira Maharaj is the longest section in the entire Mahabharata, the Anushasan Parva, etc. So, but what is described in more than 1000 pages, in the Bhagavatam, it is just mentioned in only in three verses. Because Bhagavatam is a scripture which only focuses on the Bhagavad Dharma. But in the Mahabharata, all the different dharmas are elaborated. What all the discussion spoken by Bhishma Dev is mentioned there. So, Purusha Swabhava Vihitan Yata Varnam Yata Shramam Vairagya Ragopadibhyam Amnato Bayalakshanam. So, Bhishma Dev described dharma suitable for men according to their nature, Swabhava Vihitan, according to Varna and Ashrama, Yata Varnam Yata Shramam. Vairagya Ragopadibhyam, which have qualities of renunciation and enjoyment, Vairagya and Raga. And Amnato Ubaya Lakshanam. And he described all these dharmas according to the person's detachment or attachment. Amnato Ubaya Lakshanam. So we see that because some of the dharmas are like Grahastha Dharma, Grahastha Ashram is the ashram of attachment. So he describes dharma suitable for Grahastha Ashram. And there are, say, Vanaprastha, Sannyasa Ashram is an ashram of detachment. So he describes dharmas of detachment suitable to that ashram. So in this way, Bhishma Dev described the general dharma for the human beings according to their nature and according to their varna and ashrama. So the ashramas have their qualities of renunciation and enjoyment, as I mentioned, Grahastha Ashram and other ashramas. So out of the four ashramas, Grahastha Ashram is an ashram of enjoyment. Other three ashramas are ashram of detachment. So it is a rule that all the ashramas, such as the brahmachari, need not be undertaken one after the other by all the brahmanas. So if they have constant renunciation, then from a brahmachari ashram, then one can directly become a sannyasi. And if they have constant attachment, then from brahmachari ashram, a person progresses to the grihastha ashram. And then a person progresses further, vanaprastha or sannyasi, like that. So here, actually Prabhupada's purport is in great detail, but if I go through each and everything, like we may not be able to complete the chapter only. But I request everyone to actually go through the Prabhupada's purports. Vishwanath Chakravartipad, he doesn't go into the details of the say Brahmana Dharma, Kshatriya Dharma, Vaishya Dharma. He just mentions few verses purport. But Prabhupada, he goes into detail. He says that there are 9 qualities for all human beings. Irrespective of the Varna and Ashrama, all civilized men have to exhibit 9 qualities. Not to become angry, not to lie, to equally distribute wealth, to forgive, to support the servants or the subordinates. So he mentions about the 9 qualities for the civilized human beings. And then he talks about the quality, the duties of a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. So he says the purpose of Varnashram is to accelerate the transcendental qualities of the individual person so that he may gradually realize his spiritual identity and thus act accordingly to get free from material bondage. So Varnashram is like a bridge in order to cross the ocean of material existence. So one should not think that I don't need the bridge. Devotees like Hanumanji, they could jump across the ocean without the help of a bridge. Liberated souls, they don't need the bridge of Varnashram. But all the other monkey soldiers, they needed the bridge in order to cross the ocean. So for a sadhaka bhakta, he needs the bridge of Varnashram along with the sadhana bhakti in order to actually come to the, in order to achieve the highest goal of life. So therefore, one should not reject the bridge of Varnashram, nor should a person become attached to the bridge and make a house in the bridge and start living there only. Our Varnashram is like a staircase. Staircase is meant to go from, say, ground floor to first floor. We cannot think that no, I will just directly jump from ground floor to first floor, or I will directly jump from first floor to ground floor. Then you will only break the legs. Some superhuman can do without breaking the legs. He can directly jump. So liberated soul don't need the staircase of Varnashram. But somebody at the same time do not just make the house in the staircase only and keep living there. No, staircase is just a tool to go from one place to another place. That's what Prabhupada says. So all these different duties about Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, all these are profound, and it's important to understand how much ever if we practice these things, it will be helpful in our. It will be helpful to create a stability in our life, and also in the stability in the. It will provide stability to the people who are connected to us, because one person performing the Varnashram duty is connected to others' needs getting fulfilled. So therefore, when a person performs the Varnashram duty, then it also creates stability in others' life, and then that will help them to think about the higher goal of life. So therefore, these and going through this is important. Like one place in the purport, it says that in the Grihastha ashram, the whole system of ashram dharma is a means for detachment. The brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyas, the whole purpose of the ashram dharma is a means for detachment. But one who fails to assimilate the spirit of detachment is allowed to enter the family life, but with the same spirit of detachment. And grihastha ashram is meant for one who is attached, and vanaprastha ashram is meant for one who is detached. So in that way, we see that the ashram dharma is so beautifully described. So another important point is that if you see, there are two conversations which happen in which so many sages from all over the universe took part. One is the Shukdev Goswami speaking to Parishit Maharaj, in that all the sages also came and listened. And another is Bhishma Dev speaking to Yudhishthira Maharaj. And when Shukdev Goswami spoke to Parishit Maharaj, he spoke purely about the Bhagavad Dharma. He did not have to dilute the Bhagavad Dharma with along with the other dharmas, because Parishit Maharaj was about to die. And for a person who is about to die, the one and only duty is to actually remember Krishna. Therefore, Shukdev Goswami purely spoke about the Bhagavad Dharma. That is the Bhagavatam is called the Amalam Puran. But Bhishma Dev, when he spoke to Yudhishthira Maharaj, Bhishma Dev spoke about all these other dharmas, because Bhishma Dev's main purpose was to convince Yudhishthira to begin managing his kingdom. So therefore, Bhishma Dev also spoke about the Bhagavad Dharma. We will see in the next verse. But that was one part of the presentation. But along with the Bhagavad Dharma, he had to speak the other dharmas also. So therefore, in our preaching also, suppose like if somebody is say retired person, somebody is done with all the responsibilities, then he needs to be he just needs to go more and more deep into Bhagavad Dharma. We can just focus on only giving the pure Bhagavatam to the person. But somebody who has a whole life ahead, a young person or a whole life ahead, if we speak only the Bhagavad Dharma, which is the highest Dharma, Bhagavad Dharma has to be taught. But along with the Bhagavad Dharma, you also need to make him a responsible devotee, not an we don't want to make somebody an escapist devotee. In order to make a person responsible devotee, we need to teach about Bhagavad Dharma along with the other dharmas. So therefore, Bhishma Dev, he wanted Yudhishthira Maharaj to take up the responsibility of being a king. Therefore, he spoke about all the other dharmas along with the Bhagavad Dharma. So another point is that if we say that one of the strategy adopted by certain spiritual leaders, like yesterday I read a quote, and this spiritual leader mentioned that we will teach the Vedantic thought process to the Western people, and we will take the Western system for the Indians. So you see, this particular thought, what is the thought process is that like India can offer only the Vedantic thought process to the Westerners, but Western systems, Western way of living, Western industrialization, they are all much superior to the Indian way of living. So therefore, let us adopt the Western way of living. So that was the thought process of this spiritual leader, and many spiritual leaders also adopted this kind of strategy. We will give the knowledge of Gita and the Bhagavatam or Vedanta Sutra to the West and yoga to the West, but we will adopt the Western way of progress for the Indians. This is a wrong thought process. It is proved to be a failure, because the Vedic literatures, it is not that they only offer the process of leaving this world. No, Vedic literatures, they offer a all around program, the process of leaving this world and also the art of living in this world. The art of living in this world and the art of leaving this world, both are offered by the Vedic thought process. But when we adopt the Vedic thought process for the art of leaving this world, but if we adopt the Western thought process for the art of living in this world, then we will create a mess in our life. So the art of living in this world is the system of Varnashram Dharma, which is the system given by Krishna. So therefore, like that's why Prabhupada, of course, he adopted a institution model of just a Western idea for propagating Krishna consciousness, but still Prabhupada emphasized that that 50% of my mission is to establish Varnashram. So he mentioned that. So therefore, that sometimes we find that sometimes some spiritualists, they may speak pure Bhagavatam, they may speak pure Siddhanta from the Shastra, but for the sake of management, they may adopt certain different Western authors. Are we like, do our scriptures lack any teachings on management? Why do we have to adopt some Western authors for management? In fact, if we read the Yudhishthira Maharaj, this teachings, Bhishma Dev's teaching to Yudhishthira Maharaj, we can find all the principles of management and everything you can find. We just have to like package it in a way. Of course, one of the like Chanakya Pandit said that one can accept gold even coming from a even if it is found in a place full of stool. So even somebody, one can seek the essence from coming from any person. But the point is that like our scriptures, they don't lack in any way about management or the different the way of living in this world. The Vedic scriptures offer a all-round program. They offer a integrated program. They offer a wholesome program for a person to live in this world and also leave this world. And that's what Krishna says in the Gita. I think 3.10. Sahayagyam praja srishtva purovacha prajapatihi anena prasavishyadvam yeshavoshtishta kamaduk. Perform this yajna, by that you will attain prosperity in this world and also attain liberation in this next world. And it has been proved also. Like yesterday somebody sent a video in the WhatsApp that how the Yamuna is so crystal clear. Because of the like all the industries were closed down. Now in the 2 months, like we had in so many decades, there was a project of Clean Ganga project. I think several thousands of crores worth this Clean Ganga project was there. But what the several thousands of crores of Clean Ganga project could not do in so many years, this lockdown had achieved in just in 2 months. That means nature has the ability to actually to take care of herself. So therefore, that this wholesome approach should be important. So Bhishma Dev, another important point is that, like we see Bhishma Dev spoke about all these dharmas, and Krishna heard this, Yudhishthir heard this, Shukdev Goswami heard this. Shukdev Goswami was the person who is liberated from birth. He could have said, why Bhishma Dev is speaking all these material dharmas? Oh, I don't want to hear all this. No, Shukdev Goswami is liberated from birth, but he heard all these varnashram dharmas which are material in nature. But he heard that because it was needed for Yudhishthir to know all these dharmas, it was needed for Yudhishthir to become the king, to take up the responsibility of being the king. So sometimes we may find some devotees are, like I observed sometimes, they say, oh, I don't want to hear anything connected to Mahabharata or anything connected to these other dharmas in the Bhagavatam class. Like we are not even liberated like Shukdev Goswami, and Shukdev Goswami heard all these other dharmas patiently. But we are just a sadhaka, we are not in liberated platform. But sometimes we may say, oh, I want to hear only the pure Bhagavatam. I don't want to hear anything about other dharmas. No, these dharmas also need to be educated, and to the extent when we perform these other dharmas according to our capacity, that will create a stability in our life. So therefore, that we not only need to worship Krishna by the 9 processes of bhakti, but we also need to adopt the system of Krishna. Of course, we understand that in the Kali Yuga we can't establish the varnashram in the way the Vedic this one, but it on an individual level, in whatever way we can actually follow, to whatever extent we can follow these principles, and it will be beneficial. The very practical teachings are given. So yeah, going ahead, 28th verse, dharmartha kama mokshamscha sahopayan yata mune nanakyena itihaseshu varnayan asa tattvavit. So here he says that Bhishma accurately described the dharma, artha, kama and moksha along with their methods, using various stories and histories as a proof. So you can remember that he not only remembered the philosophy, but he remembered all the stories. So generally we find like we don't know what will happen to us also, but when a person grows old, like we forget, our thought process becomes we are not able to think, we forget many things, or we speak incoherently. But Bhishma Dev remembered, yata means accurately. He accurately described all this. So one of the things about Mahabharata and Srimad Bhagavatam, see, Mahabharata is a scripture which is focused on dharma, artha, kama, moksha. And I think I mentioned in previous class also last week that there are few sections of the Mahabharata which focus on the transcendence, like Vishnu Sahasranam, Bhagavad Gita, Narayaniya section. But Bhagavatam, from starting to end, it is filled with pure spirituality. It is the Bhagavatam teaches the ultimate goal of life is actually love for Krishna, Panchama Purushartha. But from the Mahabharata point of view, the ultimate goal is, say, moksha. It is speaking about dharma, artha, kama, moksha. So we may not accept Mahabharata from the point of view of the ultimate goal as a moksha. But the ultimate goal is actually Krishna Prema, the sadhana is the bhakti, process of bhakti. But still Mahabharata, although we may not accept Mahabharata from the ultimate goal of life point of view, but Mahabharata has many useful things to offer from the point of view of living in this world. And like Gopi Pardhan Prabhu writes a similar point in the prayers of the Vedas personified when he talks about the 6 systems of philosophy. There is a verse that he says that many of the 6 systems of philosophy, from their conclusion point of view, they differ from the Bhagavad Dharma. From their conclusion, some of them are very much contradicting with the ultimate conclusion of the Vedanta Sutra and the Srimad Bhagavatam. But although from conclusion point of view, you may not accept them, but all these other philosophies, they offer very practical, useful tools for understanding the Vedic literature, Vaisheshika, Nyaya, Mimamsa. Similarly, Mahabharata, from the goal point of view, we may not accept the goal of Mahabharata because Krishna Prema is higher than moksha. Of course, moksha is a valid goal, but Krishna Prema is higher than a moksha. But we can learn Mahabharata, we can still gain from Mahabharata from different practical ways of living in this world. So Bhishma spoke all these various dharmas. So Prabhupada, again in this purport also, I'll not go into the details of these verses, but this purport also, Prabhupada, I think this is dharma artha kama. In this purport also, Prabhupada gives a detailed this one. So all the dharmas can be ultimately in 4 categories: dharma, artha, kama, moksha. He mentions these categories in order to strengthen what has been said. So we see that how there is a balance between iha and para, this worldly dharmas and our eternal dharma. So Bhishma gave all the teachings. So, and then 29th verse. So Prabhupada in the purport in the 27th verse also, he talks about how there are different points about Dana Dharma, Raja Dharma, and Moksha Dharma. They are very beautiful points. I'll just read few points in the Moksha Dharma, that Bhishma Dev says that how to conquer the different vices. One can conquer anger by forgiveness. One can conquer unlawful desires by not making plans. One can conquer sleep by spiritual culture, conquer desires and avarice by tolerance, conquer disturbances from various diseases by regulated diet, and conquer false, one can become free from false hopes by self-control. So like that, one can overcome dizziness by getting up early in the morning. And then Bhishma Dev speaks about the Stri Dharma, and then he spoke about the Bhagavad Dharma. So it's explained that out of all the dharmas, the Bhagavad Dharma is the most important. So therefore, the Bhagavad Dharma is mentioned at the end. So Bhagavad Dharma is the principles of devotional service. So finally, he spoke about the Bhagavad Dharma, which is the most important dharma. So then, after speaking all these stories, after all these dharmas, the 29th verse, dharmam pravadatastasya sakala pratyupastitah yo yoginas chanda mrityor vanchitastu uttarayanah. The time of Uttarayana, which was desired by Bhishma, who had finished speaking on dharma and could die when he chose, then arrived. Then after he spoke all these dharmas, then the time of Uttarayana had arrived. So then at that time, withdrawing his words from other subjects, tada upasamhritya giras sahasranir. He withdrew his words from other subjects with eyes wide open. Bhishma, who is a leader of 1,000 chariots, concentrated himself free of all material attachment upon Krishna, the original person, dressed in shining yellow garments with 4 arms standing before him. So we see Bhishma Dev, another way to look at is that, like Bhishma Dev, when a person he is on the deathbed, he is on the bed of arrows, like from his point of view, he should only remember Krishna. He should only remember Krishna at the time of death. But from the point of view of Yudhishthira Maharaj, who is supposed to become the king, he needs to hear all these other dharmas. So Bhishma Dev he was not selfishly attached to Krishna. Oh, I have to remember Krishna, so therefore I will speak only pure Bhagavatam. Because if I speak about these other dharmas, maybe I will get attached. No, he saw from the point of view of that audience, Yudhishthira Maharaj needs to hear all these dharmas. So from personally, sometimes we may be wanting to be absorbed in something. But then from the point of view of the audience needs to hear the Bhagavad Dharma along with the other dharma. So therefore you need to educate fully. So Bhishma Dev, if he had been selfishly Krishna conscious, then he would have just spoken only the Bhagavad Dharma. But he saw from the point of view of Yudhishthira Maharaj, no, he needs to be a king and he needs to be a devotee in the position of a king. Therefore, he needs to hear the other dharmas and the moksha dharma. Therefore, he saw from a Yudhishthira Maharaj's point of view. He was more concerned about what is needed for Yudhishthira Maharaj and what is needed for the Dharma Rajya to be established, which is the desire of Krishna, than from his own selfish Krishna consciousness. He did not see from his own, instead of seeing from his own personal absorption, he saw from the point of view what is needed for Yudhishthira Maharaj. Therefore, he spoke all these things. And then after speaking all these dharmas, then he withdrew his words from all the other subjects. Then he focused completely on Krishna. So generally we find sometimes when people exhibit detachment at the wrong time, okay, I will not go speak about any of the other subjects. Then later when a person exhibits detachment at the wrong time, then when then a person ends up like exhibiting attachment at the wrong time. So instead, when a person exhibits attachment and simultaneously remembering Krishna, then one will become detached from the whole situation and then one can completely focus on Krishna. So Yudhishthira Maharaj, he spoke about all these various other dharmas, which are all temporary dharmas. But then because that was needed for Yudhishthira Maharaj, and then he withdrew his mind from all these subjects, and then he actually exclusively focused on Krishna. So that is what the 30th verse says. So Prabhupada says in the purport that Sahasrani means one who was expert in thousands of science and arts, or one who spoke on different subjects with thousands of meanings. Or Sahasrani means that one who fought on thousands of battlefields and saved thousands of persons. Or Sahasrani can mean that one who led thousands of chariots. So therefore, and then at this point, 31st verse, Vishuddhaya dharanaya hata shubhas tadikshayaivasu gatayudashrama nivritta sarvendriya vritti vibramas tushtava janyam visrijat janardanam. So Bhishma Dev, Vishuddhaya Dharanaya. He became free of all inauspiciousness by his pure concentration. And he became Gata Yuddha Shrama. He became freed from the physical fatigue from fighting. And Nivritta Sarvendriya Vritti Vibramas. He became freed of the wandering senses by Krishna's glance of mercy, Tad Ikshaya. Then he became freed from wandering senses by Krishna's glance of mercy. Then he began to praise Krishna. Tushtavajanyam Visija Janardanam. So we see, this is the 31st verse. The Prabhupada says that Krishna is like the sun and Maya is like the darkness. Just on the arrival of Krishna, all the material contamination was completely removed, and Bhishma Dev was thus able to transcendentally situate himself by stopping the activities of the impure senses in collaboration with matter. So then, now the next section is the Bhishma Dev's prayers from verse number 32 to 42. So there are, you can say 11 prayers. We will go through these prayers fast. Shri Bhishma Uvacha Iti Matirupakalpita Vitrishna Bhagavati Satvata Pungave Vibhumni Swasukamupagate Kvachid Vihartum Prakriti Mupe Yushi Yadbhava Pravaha. So Bhishma Dev said, at the end of my life, I offer my thoughts to you. So when we go to a temple, we have to take something for Krishna. So one of the item of sadhana bhakti is that offering a favorite article to Krishna. If we see any traditionally, whenever a person goes to temple, they would at least offer something, the hundi, or they would take some oil or ghee to offer in the ghee lamp, or they would take some flower, or they would offer some boga or some garland. So we offer some gifts to Krishna. But Bhishma Dev, he didn't have any facility to offer any of these articles to Krishna. But he wanted to offer some gift to Krishna. So therefore, he is saying that, let me offer my thoughts to you at the end of my life. I want to offer my iti matir upakalpita vitrushna. I offer my thinking, feeling and willing to you. I have withdrawn all this thinking, feeling and willing from all the other subject matters, and I want to offer all these things completely unto you. You are full of the 6 qualities, Bhagavan. Bhagavati Satvata Pungave Vibhumni. And you are the best of the Yadus, Satvata Pungave. And you are superior to all the other forms of the Lord. And you are Swasukam Upagate Kvachid Vihartum. You are absorbed in bliss with your associates. And as a pastime in the form of the Purushavatara, you sometimes accept Maya by your glance, which produces the material world. Prakritim upeyushi yad bhava pravaha. You sometimes accept Maya by your glance, which produces the material world. So that Bhishma Dev was thinking that since my master has come to me at the time of my passing away, because of this mercy, I want to offer some gift, and there is nothing suitable in this abode of possessiveness and ego. He is thinking that, like, my body is actually completely filled with possessiveness and ego. There's nothing suitable in this body. Therefore, I make a gift of my thoughts alone. So, one devotee, it is a Loka Katha, it is mentioned, when Bhishma Dev spoke all these different dharmas to Yudhishthira Maharaj, Draupadi asked Bhishma, like, in the Asat Sabha, I just asked one question: what is my dharma in this particular circumstance? And I asked only 2 questions, and what Yudhishthira Maharaj did, was it according to Dharma? I just asked only these two questions about Dharma, but at that time you did not answer anything to my question. But now in so many thousands of verses you are speaking about all these different dharmas. Why were you not able to answer me at that particular time? So that time Bhishma Dev mentions, Bhishma Dev says, actually, of course, this particular story is not there in the Mahabharata, but what Bhishma Dev spoke, that is there in the Mahabharata, which Prabhupada also, Baldev Vidyabhushan quotes the second chapter, I think 5th or 6th verse purport. So Bhishma Dev said, see, because I was eating the food given by Duryodhan, my mind was contaminated. So I did not have the proper sense of discrimination at that time. Therefore, I could not answer your question there. But now, after the battle is over, by the arrows of Arjuna, all that impure blood which was nourishing my body by eating the food given by Duryodhan, all that impure blood has been taken away by the Arjuna's arrows. So therefore I have become purified. Therefore now I am having the proper sense of discrimination. Therefore I am now able to speak. All these things. So Prabhupada also mentioned the story in some lecture. But so the point here is that we can learn the lesson of how one's thought process gets affected by eating the impure food cooked by maybe person with a wrong consciousness. So Bhishma Dev said, therefore I could not answer your question there. So that is why one of the things we find those who are serious devotees, spiritually advanced, like they are very careful about what they eat. Even Krishna, he was very careful when he came to, as a Shanti Doot to actually Hastinapur, he was very careful about where he would eat. So he actually accepted food at Vidura and he did not accept the food given by Duryodhan. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was also very careful about eating, so because that actually affects one's consciousness. So that's another point I remembered. Anyway, here coming back to this prayer. So Bhishma Dev is saying that I offer all my thoughts to Bhagavan, who is full of the 6 wonderful qualities. And this Bhagavan is the source of Narayana. He is the source of Narayana, and this Krishna has attained profusely the highest bliss with his own devotees, Yadavas and Pandavas. So the primary quality of Krishna is that how Krishna enjoys bliss in the association of his devotees. And then he mentioned the secondary quality in the last line of the verse, that Prakritim Upeishi Yad Bhava Pravaha. The last line of the verse talks about the secondary quality of Krishna, about Lord's relationship with the material energy. So as the Purushavatara, the Lord sometimes glances upon the Maya in order to produce the material world. So that is the secondary quality of the Lord. And then the primary quality is how the Lord enjoys bliss in association with his devotees. That is described in the third line, Swa Sukham Upagate, or the second and third line. So yeah, Prabhupada writes, so Bhishma Dev as a statesman, he engaged all his thinking, feeling and willing on Krishna. In order to attain pure devotional service, he wanted to invest all the powers of thinking, feeling and willing entirely in the Supreme Being Krishna. So Krishna deals with the non-devotees as a Paramatma, but with the devotees, he gives spiritual instructions for going back to Godhead. There are some points mentioned in the purport. Let us go to the next verse. Tribhuvana Kamanam Tamala Varnam Ravikara Gauravarambaram Dadane Vapuralaka Kula Vritana Vijaya Sake Ratirastu me Anavadya. So here Bhishma Dev says that let me have Vijaya Sake Ratir Astu me Anavadya. Anavadya Rati. Let me have pure prema for Krishna, who is the Vijaya Sake, the friend of Arjuna, and who possesses a body desired by the inhabitants of the three worlds. Tribhuvana Kamanam Tamala Varnam Ravikara Gaura Varambaram Dadane Vapur Alaka Kulavrita Anabjam. He who possesses a body which is desired by the inhabitants of the three worlds and which is clothed with the intensely yellow garments shining in the sun. Tamala Varanam Rafikara Gaura Varambaram Dadane. And his complexion is dark like the Tamala tree, Tamala Varanam, and his lotus face is surrounded by the locks of hair. Vapur Alaka Kulavrita Nanabjam. His lotus face is surrounded by the locks of hair. So, in the previous verse, Bhishma Dev said that, what is the, I want to offer my thoughts to Krishna. So, Krishna asked that, what is the nature of your thoughts? So, he is expressing the nature of the thoughts. Let me have pure prema without desire for the results. For the friend of Arjuna, who accepts a body which is desired by all the persons in the three planets, and is clothed in garments golden in the sun's rays. And I saw that intense yellow, I saw this particular form, which was who was wearing like a pitambar cloth shining in the presence of the sun. I saw this particular form when Krishna stood as a chariot driver of Arjuna. So therefore, my thoughts take the form of a prayer that let me have prema for this form of Partha Sarathi, the chariot driver of Arjuna. So we can see that Bhishma Dev is especially attracted to the Partha Sarathi form of Krishna. So although that is why, although generally actually Krishna is personally present before Bhishma Dev, so he should have addressed Krishna in the second person. Let me have love for you. He should have addressed the second person. Let me have love for you. But instead of addressing Krishna in the second person, he is saying that let me have pure prema for the Vijaya Saka, for the form of Partha Sarathi. He is addressing Krishna in the third person. That means let me have love for that person who is the Vijaya Saka, who is the friend of Arjuna. So instead of addressing the second person, he is addressing the third person. Thus indicates actually that Bhishma's attraction for Krishna's form, especially in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So this indicates his attraction for the sweetness of the Lord, who was absorbed in Virya Rasa during the battle, and Bhishma Dev's absorption in relishing that form. So Prabhupada writes in the purport that Krishna is pleased when he is addressed conjointly with his devotees, like Vijaya Saka. And so during the fighting, Bhishma Dev's attraction was drawn by the glittering dress of Krishna, and indirectly he admitted that his enemy Arjuna, indirectly he admired his enemy Arjuna for possessing Krishna as a friend. So sometimes like Arjuna was directly in the presence of Krishna, but Arjuna could not appreciate that form of Krishna. But Bhishma Dev, because he was on the opposite side, he was able to appreciate that form of Krishna in the battlefield. Sometimes the devotee who is offering the Pushya Abhishek is very close to the deity. He is offering the flowers. But the devotees who are actually witnessing the Pushya Abhishek, they may relish more than the Pujari who is actually doing Abhishek of the deities. So therefore, that like Bhishma Dev, in one sense, more fortunate than Arjuna. He was able to see that form. So Prabhupada says that transcendental relation with the Lord in any of the rasas is realized by respective devotees in the highest ecstasy. So today I will not take a break in the middle. I will go through the entire chapter. At the end I will take questions. So then Prabhupada mentioned, but Sahajiyas, they have a cheap relation with the Lord. They exhibit only the base quality of the mundane, because one who has relished conjugal humor with Lord cannot be attached to the worldly conjugal rasa, which is condemned even by the mundane ethics. The next verse, Bhishma Dev says, Yudi Turaga Rajo Vidumra Visvak Kacha Lulita Shamavari Alankritasye Mama Nishita Sharair Vibidya Mana Twachi Vilasat Kavachestu Krishna Atma. So here he says that after speaking how Krishna's face was surrounded by the locks of hair, Bhishma was not able to give up that sweetness. He again describes more details of the form in this particular verse. So, may my mind concentrate on Krishna, whose face was decorated with the hair covered with the dust raised by the horses. Yudi Turaga Raja. Raja means dust. Vidumra Vishwak. And when the chariot was going, like his hair was tossed all about because of the speed of his driving. And Krishna was also perspiring because Krishna was putting great effort in protecting Arjuna. And Krishna's, so I want to actually concentrate on this form of Krishna. And that Krishna's form was also slightly pierced by my sharp arrows. I also shot arrows, Mama Nishita Sharair Vibidyamana. So Bhishma Dev is remembering all this beautiful form. Because Vishwanath Chakravarti gives a very rasika commentary here, that although Bhishma Dev actually pierced shot arrows at Krishna, but Krishna derived pleasure from Bhishma Dev's shooting arrows. That in fact, this verse also talks about how Krishna put great effort in protecting Arjuna. He was perspiring, like dust was actually, his hair was decorated with the dust. It's like Krishna put great effort. And Krishna derived at the same time, when Bhishma Dev shot arrows at Krishna, Krishna derived pleasure from Bhishma Dev's fighting and Bhishma Dev shooting the arrows. So just like in the relationship between a lover and a beloved, a man who is actually reciprocating the love of the beloved, the man actually derives happiness from the bite marks of a bold lover. So similarly, Krishna, the most courageous warrior, he derived pleasure from the Bhishma Dev's strength in the form of the wounds from his arrows. So Krishna derived pleasure from Bhishma Dev's arrows. But one may think that then was Bhishma Dev, like Krishna also derived pleasure from fighting with Shishupal, Dantavakra, and Narsingadev derived pleasure from fighting with Hiranyakashipu or Hiranyaksha. Then maybe Krishna also derived pleasure from Bhishma Dev like that. So Krishna derived pleasure, but Bhishma Dev fought with Krishna with hate and envy, like that one may think. But Vishwanath Chakravarti and Prabhupada clarify that it is not only Krishna derived pleasure, but even Bhishma Dev was not devoid of prema towards Krishna. Bhishma Dev was not devoid of prema towards Krishna. Just like in a loving exchange between a man and a woman, when a woman inflicts deep wounds upon her beloved, although women may consider the beloved dearer than the million of her lives, but she may inflict deep wounds on her beloved, but that cannot be said to be devoid of love for the beloved. So similarly, although Krishna's skin was in one sense pierced by Bhishma Dev's arrows, but it was not devoid of prema on the part of Bhishma Dev. Bhishma Dev shot the arrows out of love towards Krishna. So Prabhupada writes here in the purport that he mentions that was the Lord pained by the arrows? No, the Lord was not pained by the arrows. Spirit cannot be pierced or burnt, etc. And but how the non-devotees will see this? So the non-devotees may think that non-devotees want to kill Krishna right from the beginning. Like Kamsa wanted to kill Krishna, Ravana wanted to kill Ram. But Bhishma Dev's piercing the body of Krishna is a sort of a bewildering problem for the non-devotee atheists. So, or in another words, Prabhupada says that Bhishma Dev is in one sense was repenting the activities he committed against the Supreme Lord. So in one sense, this is the Rasa Leela in the battlefield. Rasa Leela in the battlefield means like Rasa Leela is happened between Krishna and the gopis. But Rasa Leela in another sense, it means like when a Lord and the devotees experience Bhakti Rasa in relation to each other by serving each other. That in that sense, in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, that Krishna derived Virya Rasa. Krishna experienced Virya Rasa in accepting the arrows of Bhishma, and Bhishma also experienced that Bhakti Rasa by shooting arrows with Krishna. So, but Bhishma Dev was repenting here for the actions he committed against the Lord, like that Prabhupada writes. And also Bhishma Dev is appreciating Krishna's merciful mood, that how Krishna did not leave Arjuna alone, although Krishna was disturbed by the sharpened arrows of Bhishma Dev. Nor was Krishna reluctant to come before Bhishma Dev's deathbed, even though he was ill-treated by him on the battlefield. You see, it's not that Krishna had some grudge towards Bhishma. Oh, Bhishma shot arrows at me in the battlefield. No, Krishna did not actually leave Arjuna alone. He put his best effort to protect Arjuna. And Krishna also came before Bhishma Dev at the time of when Bhishma Dev was putting his body. That means Krishna did not have any grudge towards Bhishma Dev. The 35th verse. Sapadi Saki Vacho Nishamya Madhye Nija Parayor Balayo Ratam Niveshya Sitavati Parasainikayur Akshna Hitavati Partha Sake Ratir Mamastu. So here Bhishma Dev remembers Krishna executing the order of Arjuna and delivering all the soldiers in the battlefield by his glance. He is saying that Ratir Mamastu, all this prayer, one thing we find that may I have prema for the Lord, may I have attraction for the Lord. May I have Rati for the chariot driver of Arjuna, who placed the chariot between the two opposing armies immediately on hearing Arjuna's request. Senayor Ubayor Madhye Ratam Stapaya Mechuta. And then may I have love for Krishna, who by his glance took away the prarabdhi karmas of the opposing party. So prarabdhi karmas of the opposing party. So we see that even in the third canto, Uddhava says that Parthastra Puta Padamapurasya. So all the people in the battlefield, they got purified by the arrows of Arjuna, and then they attained Vaikuntha. So Bhishma Dev is remembering that. So here Prabhupada says that why Bhishma Dev addressed Krishna as Partha Saka. So the Lord is never the order supplier of anyone, but out of his causeless mercy and affection for his devotees, he carries out the order of his devotee like an awaiting servant. So the Lord diminished the duration of life of the opposing party by his glance. So we can see the absolute nature of the Lord, that even those people who fought on the opposite side, they also got purified. And then the next verse, Vyavahita Pratana Mukam Nirikshya Swajana Vadat Vimukasya Dosha Buddhya Kumatim aharat atma vidyayas charanarati paramasya tasya mestu. So here he says that, may I have prema for the feet of the Supreme Lord, who by giving knowledge of himself. So Bhishma remembers how Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. So may I have love for Krishna, who spoke the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna and destroyed the ignorance of Arjuna, and who on seeing the heads of the opposing army at a distance refused to fight, because Arjuna thought that it was a sin to his relatives. So like there is a beautiful Arjuna experienced loss of intelligence, but that was caused by Krishna himself before the battlefield. And Yudhishthir experienced loss of intelligence after the battle was over. So Krishna did like that in order to reveal the Bhagavad Gita. So actually, although Arjuna heard the Bhagavad Gita from Krishna, it took 10 days for Arjuna to actually to fight against Bhishma, because the main opposition for Arjuna in fighting was that he wanted to he was reluctant to fight against Bhishma. So but he took 10 days for Arjuna to fight against Bhishma. But at one point, when actually Krishna was unhappy with Arjuna, that he said that, why are you actually not putting your full effort to fight against Bhishma? And then if you are not going to kill Bhishma, because if Bhishma does not fall, there is no way by which we can win the battle. If Bhishma does not fall, there is no hope of victory. If you don't fight, that I will actually take up the weapon and I will attack Bhishma. So Krishna took up a weapon, Krishna took up a chariot wheel, and he was about to attack Bhishma. So you know that famous picture. So at that time, Bhishma Dev gives up his weapons, and then he actually surrenders to Krishna. He says, please attack me, and please attack and kill me, because I want to be killed by you. And Arjuna was actually holding the feet of Krishna. No, you don't take up the weapons, you have taken the vow. I will actually fight Bhishma with great force. So Krishna attracted Arjuna by that particular act. When Krishna took up the chariot wheel to attack Bhishma, Krishna attracted Arjuna to perform his duty with a greater vigor. And by that same act, Krishna attracted Bhishma to retire from his position of fighting the battle. In that way, Krishna attracted both Bhishma and Arjuna. Krishna attracted Bhishma in giving up his duty, and Krishna attracted Arjuna to perform his duty with a greater vigor. So that is an example of Krishna's all-attractive nature. Krishna attracted both of them. So in the 36th verse, of course, Prabhupada talks about the monarchy versus democracy, and how the monarchy, that the system of fighting, the kings and commanders would be in the front, and then they would fight against other people. So 37th and 38th, the 37th and 38th verse, Bhishma Dev says that how Krishna elevated his devotee to a higher position than his own position. Swanigamam apahaya mat pratigyam ritam adhikartum avapluto ratastaha drita rata charano vyaya chaladgur haririva hantum ibam gatottariya. So Bhishma Dev says that giving up his own promise, that is not to fight, mat pratigyam, and making my vow to make him fight come true, Krishna quickly got down and holding the wheel of a chariot ran towards me like a lion coming to kill an elephant, while the earth shook and his top cloth fell to the ground. So Krishna made a promise that he would not take up his weapons, but he would only assist Arjuna. And Bhishma took a vow that I will make Krishna give up his promise, and I will make him take up the weapons. So to make sure that this would come true, because one of the quality of Krishna is that Krishna never allows the words of his devotees to become untrue. So Krishna, he wanted to make the Bhishma Dev's words become true. Therefore, he actually quickly got down from the chariot so that no one could see his separation from the chariot. So normally one would think that Krishna was angry with Bhishma. That is why he is trying to attack Bhishma. But actually, one may think that Krishna was angry with Bhishma, and Krishna was because Krishna wanted to protect Arjuna. That is why he went to attack Bhishma. But from another point of view, actually Krishna was not angry with Bhishma, but Krishna was angry with Arjuna, because Krishna wanted to actually make the words of Bhishma Dev come true. What was Bhishma Dev's words? That I will make Krishna take up the weapon. So he wanted to make the Bhishma Dev's words come true. Therefore, Krishna took up the weapon. But Arjuna was trying to stop that. And Arjuna was trying to stop that. Therefore, actually, Krishna was angry with Arjuna. And Bhishma Dev had a desire to see Krishna with a weapon. And Krishna wanted to fulfill that desire of Bhishma. But Arjuna was trying to stop that. So Krishna was actually angry with Arjuna and not with Bhishma. So this is a we can say the very transcendental explanation. As I mentioned like yesterday, there is an internal reason for the Lord's appearance, the external reason for the Lord's appearance. External reason for the Lord's appearance is to establish dharma. External reason for Mahaprabhu's appearance to establish Yuga dharma. The internal reason is actually more discussed mainly with the devotees. So similarly, this explanation that Krishna was angry with Arjuna and not with Bhishma, this is a very transcendental internal reason, because Krishna wanted to please Bhishma Dev, or fulfill the words of Bhishma Dev by taking up the weapon, by breaking his own promise. But if we see from another point of view, from the external point of view, we can compare Krishna with Bhishma. Bhishma had taken up a vow that he will always remain loyal to actually the kingdom of Hastinapur. So in one sense, Bhishma Dev was completely selfless. He didn't have a single selfish desire. But his selflessness was engaged in the service of the selfish Duryodhana. So therefore, it is not about simply being selfless, but what is the effect of that selflessness? Is it benefiting the society? Or is that selflessness engaged in the service of the selfish people, or is it engaged in the service of the good people? So Bhishma Dev was a person, his heart was given to Krishna, but his body was engaged in the service of the Duryodhana. The best example of a devotee is that one's body, mind and words all should be engaged in the service of Krishna. But sometimes, like devotees like Bhishma Dev, he was in a position where his body was engaged in the service of adharmic people, but his mind was engaged in the service of Krishna. His mind was engaged in the service of Krishna. Like Vritrasur, his body was engaged in the service of the demons, but his mind was absorbed in Krishna. Akrura, his body was engaged in the service of Kamsa, but his mind was absorbed in Krishna. But these devotees, they never justified that, I am doing this for Krishna's sake. So ideally, one's body, mind and words all should be engaged in the service of Krishna and the path of Dharma. So it is a very, you can see the awkward situation that you have love for the people on the opposite side. Before the battle, when Yudhishthira came to take blessings from Bhishma, Bhishma said that, I bless you that you become victorious. And Bhishma Dev took he told that I will never kill the Pandavas. But still he was fighting for Duryodhan. His body was engaged in the service of Duryodhan, but his heart was with the Pandavas and Krishna. So Bhishma Dev, he was bound by that vow to the kingdom. So therefore, he was little stubborn about his personal vow. But Krishna was not stubborn about his personal vow of taking up the weapon. So Krishna was also flexible. Krishna was flexible. So we see it is not about one's personal vow. It is about, is that personal vow, is it benefiting the society? In the case of Bhishma Dev, like he became stubborn about his personal vow. Because of that attachment to that personal vow, he did not speak a single word in the Asat Sabha when Draupadi was being disrobed. Because of that personal vow, Bhishma Dev fought on the side of the Kauravas. So therefore, I suggest that you also read the Bhishma Parva in the Mahabharata, where the Krishna and when Krishna and Arjuna, they go to meet Bhishma Dev and asking the secret of how we can kill you. And Bhishma Dev says that if somebody is a woman or somebody was a woman in the previous life, if he comes in front of me, then I will leave all my weapon. Like that, Bhishma Dev gives the secret. So there's a conversation between Krishna and Bhishma. There's a conversation between Krishna and Bhishma. There Krishna questions the decision of Bhishma. Krishna questions the many wrong decisions made by Bhishma, and many acharyas have also pointed out. So we see, if you see, the character of Bhishma is so profound. Bhishma Dev, he didn't have a tinge of selfishness. He was absolutely selfless, and he practiced brahmacharya. One may be, he was a pure person. He was absolutely selfless, and he was a pure devotee of Krishna. But still, he made many management mistakes. He divided the kingdom. After the Varanavata incident, when the Pandavas came back, when Bhishma Dev knew that Duryodhan was the person who planned to kill the Pandavas, instead of punishing Duryodhan, he divided the kingdom and gave one half to the Pandavas, one half to the Kauravas. And according to the Shastra, kingdom should not be divided. And like that, many mistakes he made from a management point of view, and Krishna pointed out, questioned all those mistakes in that particular conversation with Bhishma Dev. So therefore, like somebody may be very pure person, and somebody may be selfless. He may not have any hidden agenda. He may be a pure devotee, but still it does not guarantee that he may not make any management mistakes. He may still make mistakes from the point of view of dharma in the management, etc. So in the case of Bhishma Dev, he made many mistakes, but he never justified his mistakes. In fact, when he was leaving his body, he had 3 feelings. He had gratitude towards Krishna, because he felt that although I made so much of mistakes, but Krishna is so merciful. Krishna has come in front of me and given his association. He has gratitude towards Krishna, and he was satisfied that Pandavas have become the kings, and he was repentant that I did not protect Draupadi at the time of her greatest need. So these were the 3 feelings which Bhishma Dev had at the time of departure. Satisfaction that Pandavas had become the kings, gratitude towards Krishna, and repentance that I did not protect Draupadi. So we see that like one Acharya says that when Krishna was repeatedly telling Arjuna to kill Bhishma, to shoot arrows at Bhishma, it was also Krishna's great compassion towards Bhishma, because Krishna was thinking, oh, this Bhishma Dev, his selflessness has been exploited by so many people throughout his life. His selflessness was exploited by his father Shantanu. Like Bhishma, his selflessness was exploited by Satyavati's father, the fisherman, and his selflessness was exploited by Duryodhan and Dhritarashtra, because he had taken up the vow. So his selflessness has been exploited by so many people. I want to relieve Bhishma Dev from this burden. I want to relieve Bhishma Dev from this actually burden of serving these selfish people. So therefore, please shoot the arrows at Bhishma and relieve him from this. So that was the concern of Krishna. So we see we can see another principle. We also discussed that punishment and mercy. I will again highlight over here. Krishna, how he did not approve of the decisions of Bhishma Dev. He questioned those decisions because they were not true, right from the point of view of dharma before the battle or during the battle. At the same time, after the battle was over, Krishna publicly glorified Bhishma. Krishna publicly punished Bhishma Dev by telling Arjuna to shoot arrows at Bhishma. At the same time, Krishna publicly glorified Bhishma Dev after the battle. So many times, sometimes what happens in our punishment or this one, sometimes we publicly punish a person in a way that person cannot come again in the community of our devotees. And then we privately glorify the person. We publicly punish the person and we privately glorify the person. Rather, we should actually, whenever any person commits a mistake, it should be punished. There is not this one. But at the same time, the punishment and the principle of compassion both should be harmonized. So Krishna publicly punished Bhishma Dev for his management mistakes, managerially. At the same time, Krishna reciprocated with his pure devotion by coming personally in front of him, and not just personally coming in front of him, he glorified the position of Bhishma Dev in front of all the sages from the entire universe. Therefore, we see that how Krishna harmonized the principle of punishment and compassion. So, therefore, another point I mentioned, from a dharmic point of view, Krishna was not stubborn about his vows of not lifting a weapon in the battlefield, because for Krishna, his eternal vow of establishing dharma is more important than his temporary or the personal vow of not lifting of the weapon. So therefore, Krishna took up the weapon to attack Bhishma. But for Bhishma Dev, somehow he became stubborn about his personal vow of I will always remain loyal to the kingdom of Hastinapur. So because of that personal vow, he ended up fighting for the Kauravas and against the Pandavas. So in that way, this is another way to look at from a dharmic point of view. Of course, I gave there is an explanation from a transcendental point of view, just like internal reason and external reason. So internal reason is something which is discussed in the intimate circle of devotees, but for the common people, the external reason becomes more important. Therefore, the external reason should also be addressed. So, yeah, 37th verse, 38th verse. Shiti Vishika Hato Vishirna Damsha Kshataja Paripluta Atatayino Me Prasabam Abhisasara Mad Vyadartam Sa Bhavatu Me Bhagavan Gatir Mukunda. So Bhishma Dev says that let my only goal be Mukunda, who afflicted by my sharp weapons, armor broken, covered in blood, rushed towards me, his enemy, with great force in order to kill me. So he's saying that let my only goal be Mukunda. So when Krishna got down from the chariot, he became covered with the blood because the earth was covered with the rivers of blood from the slain warriors. And his armor was pierced by my sharp arrows. And then he says that like I became extraordinarily happy when Krishna approached me in anger. May my goal be no one else and only Mukunda, who is the giver of liberation. So Krishna, Bhishma Dev wanted to see the Bhakta Vatsalyata mood of Krishna towards Arjuna. Therefore, he took that vow. I will make Krishna give up his vow of taking up a weapon. And Krishna fulfilled the desire of Bhishma by taking up a weapon. So Prabhupada says that a devotee can please the Lord even by playing the part of an enemy. So the Lord being absolute, he can accept the service from his pure devotee even in the garb of an enemy. So why did Bhishma Dev pierce the body of the Lord? He purposefully pierced the body of the Lord so that to the common eyes it appeared that the Lord was wounded, but factually all this was to bewilder the non-devotees. So did Bhishma Dev consider the Lord as an enemy? No. Bhishma, had it been so, he would not have derived the Lord as his ultimate, he would not have desired the Lord as his ultimate destination. So Bhishma Dev did not consider Krishna as an enemy because Bhishma Dev is thinking that let me develop love for Krishna. And Krishna also did not consider Bhishma Dev as an enemy because had it been so, Krishna would not have come in front of Bhishma Dev. Yeah, next verse. Vijay Rata Kutumba Atta Totre Drita Haya Rashmini Tat Shriyekshaniye Bhagavati Ratirastume Mumurshot Yamiha Nirikshya Hatagata Swarupam. So desiring to die, may I have prema for the Lord who protected Arjuna's chariot, while holding a whip in his right hand, the reins in his left hand, and whose beauty must be seen, and who bestowed liberation to those who died on the battlefield after seeing him. So Bhishma has a desire that even the unrighteous should develop prema for Krishna, who is eager to protect his devotees. So Krishna protected Arjuna from the sinful, and Krishna held a whip. He held the reins of the horses, and I was able to see that particular farm. Arjuna was not able to see that particular farm. So, like as I remembered previously, that Bhishma was more fortunate to see that particular farm. So, may I have prema for that Krishna? And now, at this point, I desire to die right now, because having died, I will constantly see that form of sweetness. If I am revived, how will I see that? Because the Lord has brought about an end to his pastimes on the earth. So Bhishma Dev was thinking that so very soon Krishna is going to disappear from this world. So let me actually die by remembering that particular form of Krishna, so that I can take part in Krishna's pastimes. I can take part in the same Krishna's pastimes in some other universe. So that means actually at this point Bhishma Dev have developed a great greed for directly participating in Krishna's pastimes. So Bhishma Dev is one of the Vasu. One of the Vasus have actually taken birth as Bhishma Dev, and now this particular devotee is going to take part in the eternal pastimes of Krishna. So Prabhupada also talks about that how the pastimes of the Partha Sarathi, Krishna as a Partha Sarathi, these pastimes are eternally going on. So Bhishma Dev wanted to take part in those pastimes. That means the fighting pastimes are also eternal. What to speak of the other pastimes? Yeah, next verse. Now in the 40th verse, Bhishma Dev glorifies the position of the gopis. So he is glorifying the position of the gopis in order to get their mercy. So Lalita Gati Vilasa Valguhasa Pranaya Nirikshana Kalpitormana Kritam Anukrutavatya Unmadanda Prakritim Agankila Yasya Gopavadva. So the gopis were worshipped by Krishna's expert actions. Let my mind be fixed upon Krishna, whose motions and smile of love attracted the damsels of Vrindavan, and the damsels imitated the characteristic movements of the Lord after his disappearance from the Rasa dance. So there is a chapter in the 10th canto, chapter 30, and the Krishna disappeared, how the gopis were searching for Krishna, and then the gopis imitated the pastimes of Krishna. So Bhishma Dev is remembering how the gopis exhibited intense love for Krishna, and later Krishna also pleased the gopis by his expert actions, by his emotional displays and glances, and he is remembering the gopis in order to get their mercy. And he understands that the gopis are much superior to Arjuna in their love for Krishna. And he is feeling that I will be successful just by indicating the gopis' love towards Krishna. So that is the reason for it is not that Bhishma Dev desires the love of the gopis towards Krishna, but by remembering the gopis, he wants to achieve success in his devotional life. Maybe he will, Krishna will actually fulfill his desire. So, Vishnu Chakravarti compares Arjuna's love for Krishna versus Gopi's love for Krishna. Gopi's love for Krishna was much more intimate, and gopis were able to extremely control Krishna. But in the case of Arjuna and Krishna, although Krishna acted under the control of Arjuna, but the kind of extreme control which can be seen in the relationship between gopis and Krishna cannot be seen in the relationship between Arjuna and Krishna. That is one point he points out. And then, of course, Bhishma Dev then the 41st verse, Bhishma Dev remembers the Rajasuya sacrifice. He says that the Lord of my life, who is worthy of being seen, he received the worship of all the greatest sages and kings in the Rajasuya sacrifice, and that Krishna has become visible to my eyes. Even this chapter in the Mahabharata Sabha Parva, the Rajasuya sacrifice, when Shishupal was criticizing Krishna, Bhishma Dev speaks about the glories of Krishna. That is also one of the longest chapter in the Mahabharata. Several pages where Bhishma Dev speaks about all the different incarnations of Krishna and the pastimes which Krishna performed in so many incarnations. Lord Ram's pastimes, Vamana Dev's pastimes, Varaha Dev, and all the pastimes he mentions, and then he describes Krishna's pastimes also, what all pastimes he performed. So in that way, Bhishma Dev declared Krishna is the greatest person in the Rajasuya sacrifice. And Prabhupada mentions in the purport on the Bhagavatam. So Bhishma Dev is in one sense remembering how Krishna was worshipped in the Rajasuya sacrifice, and is remembering that Krishna has become visible to my eyes. Now, in the 42nd verse, the last verse, so Bhishma Dev, finally, again he says that he is expressing his desire that the Lord, he desires to meditate on the form of the Lord as a Partha Sarathi. Tam imam aham ajam sharira bhajam hridi dishtitam atma kalpitanam pratidrisham iva naikadarkam ekam samadhi gatosmi viduta beda moha. So freed of the illusion of difference in the Lord's various forms, I have attained the Lord, who is one, though appearing to be many, like the sun seen by many people, who is a charioteer, but who is also in my heart, the unborn, and is situated in the hearts of all the jivas who create their own bodies. So the last verse is saying that I want to see that form of Krishna as the Partha Sarathi. So in one sense, Bhishma Dev is saying that in my heart, Paramatma cannot enter my heart because Krishna as Partha Sarathi is already there in my heart. So Bhishma Dev is seeing the form of Partha Sarathi everywhere. Last week one devotee gave a beautiful class, Pavaneshwar Prabhu. He said how the vision of a Jnani, Yogi and a Bhakta. When a Jnani sees the world, Jnani sees everything as a manifestation of Brahman. When a Jnani sees the world, he sees the world as a manifestation of the Prakriti, made of the 24 elements. Or he sees everything as a manifestation of Brahman, or he sees everything as a Maya. When a yogi sees the world, he sees the presence of Paramatma in every situation. And that's what Krishna says that Yomam Pashyati Sarvatra Sarvam Cha Mai Pashyati. This verse in one sense it talks about the vision of a yogi. Yogi sees Paramatma everywhere. And when a Bhakta sees the world, a Bhakta sees the presence of his Ishta Devata everywhere. That's what Ramananda Rai told Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Stavara Jangama Nadeki Sthana Sthana Sarvatra Hoya Nija Ishta Deva Spurti. A Uttama Adhikari, a highest advanced devotee, he sees the presence of his Ishta Deva. Ishta Deva everywhere. That means if a person is a devotee of say Varagadev, he sees the presence of Varagadev everywhere. If a person is a devotee of the Shamsundar Krishna, he sees the form of Shamsundar Krishna everywhere. So here Bhishma Dev's Ishta Deva is actually Partha Sarathi Krishna, and therefore he saw the form of Partha Sarathi Krishna everywhere. Vishnu Chakravarti says that the charioteer, he says, because Krishna the charioteer has already entered and pervaded my heart completely by practice, it is not possible for the 400 form of Paramatma to enter. So in that sense the Bhishma Dev is saying. So also Prabhupada in the purport he gives the example of the, I think the sun analogy. The sun is present everywhere. So similarly, like sun may disappear in one place and then it will appear in another place. Just because the sun has disappeared in one place, it does not mean the sun is no longer present. Sun will appear, sun is in another, visible in another place. So similarly, when Krishna winds up the pastimes of the Partha Sarathi in one particular universe, but in another universe, the same pastimes are going on. So therefore, Krishna desires to take part in those pastimes. Krishna wants to be a lover of the Partha Sarathi Krishna. So in this way, Bhishma Dev, we just discussed briefly about Bhishma Dev's prayers. Now I'll go through the last series of verses in this chapter. In this way, Bhishma Dev absorbed himself in Krishna and using his mind, words and thought, and then he stopped his breathing and ceased external, and his breathing stopped and all the external functions stopped. So the stage attained by Bhishma Dev is technically called as Nirvikalpa Samadhi. He merged himself into thinking of the Lord. He merged his mind in remembrance of his different activities. And by his sight, he began to see the Lord and chanted the glories of the Lord. This is the highest stage of perfection. And one can attain this stage by following the 9 processes of bhakti. And the most important process is the hearing, because the unique hearing is the most important. The unique situation at the Bhishma Dev's time of death can be attained even though Krishna may not be personally present, if one hears about Krishna from the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam. So one who dies like Bhishma Dev attains perfection, while one who dies being forced by the laws of nature dies like an animal. And then Prabhupada says that the ignorant people who are actually seeing this incident, these ignorant people thought that Bhishma had merged into Brahman. And these ignorant people became silent. So just like these ignorant people are like the birds. The birds, what do they think? When the day ends, when the sun sets, the birds think that the day has been destroyed because they are not able to see the sun. They think that day has been destroyed, again the day will not come. So similarly, actually the day has not been destroyed, because after some time the day again appears when the night time ends. After 12 hours daylight again appears. So similarly, the ignorant people, they thought that Bhishma Dev has attained Brahman liberation. But the intelligent people understand that at that very moment, Bhishma Dev has departed in order to take part in another invisible form in the pastimes of the Parthasarathi Krishna. So, in the pastimes of the Parthasarathi Krishna. So, one should not explain that Bhishma merged into Brahman simply by giving something because that was not the goal of Bhishma Dev. Bhishma Dev clearly mentioned that let me develop love for Krishna. Bhishma Dev did not desire liberation. So this point is clarified by the Acharyas in the purport. And then this whole thing was witnessed by the Devatas. They actually played their instruments, and then they showered flowers upon Bhishma Dev. So Prabhupada says that the word Jayanti ceremony is reserved only for the day when the Lord appears on the earth. Jayanti ceremony cannot be used for the common man, like Gandhi Jayanti we say. So we cannot use the word Jayanti for a common person. So it can be used only for the Lord or his eternal associates. So therefore, the body of a self-realized person is spiritual, just like an iron in contact with the fire becomes red hot. So similarly, the body of the self-realized person who is engaged his body in the service of Krishna is also become spiritual. So then Yudhishthira performed the last rites of the departed Bhishma, and he became sad for a moment. So though Bhishma is an eternal associate of the Lord, his Amsha had entered into Vasu. So one of the Vasus, you see, in every devotee of Krishna, there is a eternal associate who appeared from the spiritual world to assist the Lord in his pastimes. Another is sometimes a demigod, a devotee from the heavenly planets, who also appears in the same body of that eternal associate in order to get further trained in his devotional life in the presence of that eternal associate. And then when that pastime gets over, that demigod portion, that devotee, the demigod portion, it will go back to that particular, he will go back to that abode of the demigod in order to continue his full tenure as a demigod. And then at the end of the tenure, he will go back to the spiritual world. Therefore, in Bhishma Dev, there is an eternal associate. Bhishma Dev was there, and then there was a Vasu from the heavenly planet who had taken birth as a Bhishma Dev. So this Vasu, he went back to the Vasu Loka, and then after his tenure gets over, then he will go back to the spiritual world. So that point is mentioned here. So therefore, Bhishma Dev attained the Aprakata Leela of Krishna as the Parthasarathi. So Yudhishthira Maharaj exhibited a sadness that he lost the association of Bhishma Dev. Then the sages, they praised Krishna with his confidential names, and then with Krishna in their hearts, they departed again for their hermitages. Then Yudhishthira Maharaj went to Hastinapur with Krishna and consoled Dhritarashtra and Gandhari, who was overcome with grief. And then with the permission of Dhritarashtra and agreement of with the permission of Dhritarashtra, Yudhishthira Maharaj started ruling the kingdom according to Dharma. So with this, we come to the end of the 49th chapter. So Prabhupada writes some of the points of the purport that he talks about Gandhari. Dhritarashtra and Gandhari, all their sons were killed by the death. All the sons were killed. And death of Bhishma Dev was another great shock for them. So we can see like Krishna took the Pandavas to pacify Dhritarashtra and Gandhari. So it was a painful thing for a Gandhari to lose all her 100 sons. And then Yudhishthira Maharaj started ruling the kingdom. With this, we come to the end of this chapter. So I will end the class here. If anybody has any questions or comments, we will take up. Question by Ananta Gopa Prabhu. Narada Muni condemned Vyasadeva included Panchama Purushartha in the Chatur Purushartha because people will forget the Bhagavad Dharma and will take other dharmas. Now Bhishma Dev is giving all other dharma and Bhagavad Dharma. How can we understand? See, it is Narada Muni's main point in Vyasadeva is that Narada Muni did not, Vyasadeva did not exclusively glorify the Bhagavad Dharma as the highest goal. He mentioned Bhagavad Dharma mainly as a means to attain other dharmas, or even if he had mentioned Bhagavad Dharma as the highest goal, he had not repeatedly mentioned. So Vyasadeva wrote the other scriptures who were qualified for the path of karma and jnana, and he had to write that, and there was nothing wrong in the other scriptures. But Vyasadeva did not write one scripture where he can exclusively glorify Bhakti and the Supreme Lord, which Vyasadeva did not do. Therefore, Narada Muni wanted to point out that. So therefore, because that's why I discussed in detail that Yudhishthira Maharaj had to become the king, and Krishna's one of the reasons for appearing in this world is that yada yada ki dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata, to establish dharma. There's an external reason for Krishna's appearance, and Krishna harmonizes the external reason and the internal reason. And to establish dharma, Krishna wanted Yudhishthira Maharaj to be the king, and the duty of a king is that he had to ensure that everyone in the kingdom practices their dharma. Therefore, Yudhishthira Maharaj needs to know all the dharmas. So therefore, there is nothing wrong in Bhishma Dev speaking the dharmas. Otherwise, if something was wrong in Bhishma Dev speaking this dharmas, then like Krishna was personally hearing that, and Narada Muni was also hearing, all the sages were hearing, and they could have raised objection. Why are you speaking all these dharmas? Why don't you speak only the Bhagavad Dharma? They could have raised objection, but nobody raised objection like that. That means that was actually proper that Bhishma Dev spoke all the dharmas. Abhay Charan Prabhu is asking that we see Grahastha devotees not formally taking Vanaprastha ashram. What one is supposed to do in the Vanaprastha? When can one take Vanaprastha? So as I mentioned, see Vanaprastha, see all these Varnashram principles in the Vedic age, there would be like a Vanaprastha ashram in the forest, like that it will be there. But in the Kali Yuga, the essence of Vanaprastha ashram is what? One increases one's direct spiritual activities more, and one delegates the whatever responsibilities which one person was doing before, one delegates to the others. So essentially, the essence of Vanaprastha ashram in Kali Yuga is that, okay, increase your chanting of Hare Krishna, increase your hearing or reading of the Bhagavatam, and also teach it to, speak Bhagavatam to others, and whatever physical service. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Whatever physical service your body allows you to do, you may do that much physical service. Therefore, the essence of Vanaprastha ashram, yeah, uh, if somebody is able to actually, okay, for somebody is able to say leave the house or go stay in the temple, yeah, that's well and good. But many times it may not be possible. Like we can many times like one has to see individually, and the essence of Vanaprastha ashram is actually increase our direct service to Krishna, and one has to see individually. And another point, when we talk about Vanaprastha ashram, like we cannot like ultimately it should be like individually one has to decide. Sometimes we like some devotees maybe others may be saying no, you have to renounce, or you have, we cannot impose that retirement on other person forcibly. Like for example, you will see in the 13th chapter, like Vidura was a person who came and spoke strong words to Dhritarashtra, and he made him actually retire from the palace, and then he took him to the forest. But if you see Yudhishthira Maharaj's reaction, Yudhishthira Maharaj felt bad. Oh, that I must have done something wrong. Why did my uncles leave me, and then where did they go? So sometimes younger people, they may try to like taunt the older people. Oh, you have to exhibit detachment, you have to enter Vanaprastha ashram. So that is a wrong thing. That's actually breaking of the Vaishnava etiquette. So it was like Yudhishthira Maharaj did not speak like that. Yudhishthira Maharaj was feeling bad. Maybe I must have mistreated my uncle, therefore he left them. He was repenting. But it was Vidura who was like a brother of Dhritarashtra, equal to him, therefore he actually spoke like that. So Vanaprastha ashram, essentially it means you increase the direct devotional service to Krishna. So that is the. So there's one more question. Why are there only, why Yamaraj mentions only 12 Mahajans? Why are there only 12 Mahajans? See, these Mahajans, see, in the Vedic scriptures, it's not that only 12 Mahajans. Anybody who follows in the footsteps of those Mahajans, they are also like a Mahajan. These 12 Mahajans are mentioned especially in the Bhagavatam, but there are so many great devotees are there. So many great devotees are there. Just like the Jayadeva Goswami mentions only 10 Dashavataras. Does that mean Lord has only 10 avatars? No, Bhagavatam says there are unlimited avatars, just like the number of rivers, number of waves in a river. So similarly, these 12 Mahajans are mentioned, but like Prabhupada, one place is mentioned that Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the 13th Mahajan, something he mentioned. And then he said, oh, you are, the devotee said, oh, you are the 14th Mahajan, Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, you will be the 15th Mahajan. Something like that. So in that sense, in the Sanatan Dharma, these 12 Mahajan, these are not frozen concepts. Like in the Christianity, there can be only one person who is the Son of God, that is Jesus Christ. Like Prabhupada asked, if the Lord is unlimited, he should have unlimited sons. Why is he having only one son? But then they said, no, there can be only one son, that is Jesus Christ. In the Christianity, you don't see the concept of New Jerusalem, New Mecca. For them, Mecca or Jerusalem means only one thing. Only that place is that. But in the Sanatan Dharma, Prabhupada started New Dwaraka, New Vrindavan, New Jagannath Puri. Means like he tried to like establish that same Dham other places. So similarly, when you talk about Mahajans also, these 12 Mahajans are mentioned, but anybody who follows in the footsteps of the Mahajan, the mode of serving to them, they also become like Mahajan. So Vasu is one of the category of the demigods. Bhishma was the 8th Vasu, correct. Vasu is one of the category of demigods. Shyam Leela Prabhu, we say that Bhishma Dev did not give up the lower dharma of serving Dhritarashtra. as opposed to protecting the chastity of Draupadi, which was much higher dharma at that time. On the other side, we also see that Bhishma Dev was a great Mahajan. How do you present Bhishma Dev to new people? That people say that how come Mahajan do such mistakes? Yeah, that is why we have to present, as I mentioned, when we say Bhishma Dev was a Mahajan, Bhishma Dev is a pure devotee of Krishna, that is from his devotion point of view to Krishna. But at the same time, yeah, Bhishma Dev, yeah, definitely he committed a mistake. When we see, again, Bhishma Dev not saying anything to Draupadi, we can see from three levels. Scriptures, we can, scriptures can be understood on three levels: Adi Bhautika, Adi Daivika, and Adhyatmika. So Adi Bhautika is on the human level, at the gross level. Adi Daivika is a subtle level, and Adhyatmika is the subtlest level. So, in the case of Bhishma Dev, okay, on the side of the Kauravas, or who did not say anything when Draupadi was being disrobed, on the Adhyatmika level, on the deepest level, it was the will of Krishna. It was the will of Krishna. But and if you see in the Adi Bhautika level or Adi Daivika level, it was definitely a mistake on the part of Bhishma Dev, because he was attached to his lowest, he was attached to his pratigya of being loyal to the kingdom. Because of that, he forgot the higher dharma, highest dharma of protecting the Krishna's devotee at the time of her greatest need. Like Krishna, in order to protect his devotee Arjuna, he broke his own personal promise. He took up the weapon. But Bhishma Dev, instead of protecting the Krishna's pure devotee at the time of her greatest need, at that time he was attached to his personal promise and he did not say a word. So therefore, it was a mistake. So therefore, on a human level, it was definitely a mistake. So therefore, when we see the scriptures, we have to teach from all the three levels. We have to teach from all the three levels: Adhyatmika, Adi Daivika, and Adi Bhautika. And we see Prabhupada also mentions in several places. For example, Chitraketu Maharaj's episode, he said it was the Parvati cursed Chitraketu Maharaj because it was the desire of the Lord that Chitraketu Maharaj come back to the spiritual world fast. That is in the Adhyatmika level. But in another purport, 7th canto, 1st chapter, Prabhupada says that Chitraketu Maharaj was punished by Krishna to become a demon because he acted demoniacally by criticizing Lord Shiva. That is on the Adi Bhautika level. So both these are presented by. So therefore, we also have to present both these understanding. Otherwise, because Adhyatmika level, if we present only the Adhyatmika level, common people will feel that, oh, Krishna is a whimsical god. So, Krishna willed that Bhishma Dev remain silent, and for this, like he didn't say anything, and when Draupadi was being disrobed, and common people will not be able to understand, and they will feel Krishna is a whimsical god. So therefore, we have to present this. He made a mistake, and Krishna punished that. Because Bhishma Dev's body was engaged in the service of the Kauravas, his body was punished by Krishna. Arjuna shot arrows at Bhishma. And because his heart was given to Krishna, Krishna rewarded that by actually personally coming in front of Bhishma. So, if we present only the Adi Bhautika level meaning, that means, oh, Bhishma Dev committed mistake and therefore he was punished, then common people will think, oh, Bhishma Dev is an ordinary person, and we will completely underestimate the person. So therefore, we also have to present the Adhyatmika level, the divine perspective. So in that way, there has to be a balance in teaching.